Hey everyone, today I'm going to be taking a look at Blue-White Control in Standard, which is a deck that I think is a little underplayed. We see a lot of aggro and mid-range in Standard right now. Not so much control. We've even got a little combo with Jeskai Ascendancy, but not much control. And this particular list here is a little different from the stock list. This is kind of my own take on the archetype. Blue-White Control saw a little bit of play earlier in the format, took second at a Star City Open, and since then, no one really seemed to care about it. There wasn't really discussion on whether Blue-White Control might be a Tier 1 deck in Standard, and I'm not sure if it's Tier 1, but I think it's good. And largely why I like this deck right now is Control, of course, is all about answering what your opponent's doing. And I think Blue-White Control, particularly the white half, is very efficient at answering what they're doing. Take, for example, Last Breath. It is the only 2-mana removal spell in the format that I'm aware of that can kill a Courser of Kruphix, which I think is worthy of mention. And Suspension Field is the only 2-mana removal spell in the format that can take care of a threat like Siege Rhino or Butcher of the Horde. And of course, we got some 2-mana counter spells in here too. So the nice thing about this deck is that on your turn 4, you can use one of your 2-mana removal spells to answer whatever they have in play, while also leaving up 2 mana to nullify their next play, which I think is pretty cool. As far as what's different, the Last Breath and the Suspension Fields are a little bit different from the stock list. People normally aren't main decking Suspension Field, and Last Breath is normally like a 2 of or a 3 of. But I just like these because of how cheap they are. Suspension Field in particular, I think people aren't giving enough credit. Some of the key threats in the format right now are cards like Brimaz, Siege Rhino, of course, even things like Doomwake Giant. It's very good at answering. Also, you notice I'm playing 4 Divination and no Jace's Ingenuity, which is a little unusual. I decided that I didn't like Jace's Ingenuity largely because it was 5 mana. I never found the instant speed very relevant, and I like being able to play multiple spells in a turn. So I like on my turn 5, for example, being able to Divination and then cast a Suspension Field, or Divination and then leave up counter mana, which is something that Jace's Ingenuity doesn't allow us to do. Or even on turn 6, Divination and Banishing Light. So that's why I decided to stick with Divination. Another thing is you notice that the counter suite is a little weird. We have 2 of, 2 of, 3 of. Dissolve is normally a consensus 4 of, but in my testing, I found that Dissolve was actually the worst counter spell because it cost 3 mana. Of course, the advantage is that it can counter anything at all. That's a problem with cards like Nullify and Disdainful Stroke. Particularly Disdainful Stroke can be completely dead in some matchups. So often post-board, I found myself cutting Dissolves for, say, like the 3rd Disdainful Stroke or more removal or something. So I decided that Dissolve was not something that I wanted as a 4 of, seeing as I didn't like having multiples of it very often, and just the fact that it cost 3 mana, it didn't necessarily line up well with my overall game plan. We also got Jace the Living Guildpact, which I'm not so sure if is a card. I wanted another win condition other than just Elspeth, and the ultimate isn't quite a win condition, but it does shuffle your graveyard into your library to prevent you from decking out, and if your opponent's answered all 3 of your Elspeths, you can ultimate your Jace and get them back, which is kind of cool. It's kind of here just to soak up a lot of damage and potentially as a tempo play. If they tap out to play their 4-mana spell and then you tap out to play your Jace and bounce it, then it's kind of like a pseudo time walk. Of course, we got End Hostilities, which is probably the main reason to be playing this as a control deck. End Hostilities is the best Wrath we have in Standard, and it's pretty good. It's no Supreme Verdict, but it gets the job done. Then we've got Elspeth as pretty much the best threat that this deck can have. Walls things, kills things, it's a win condition. Then we've got 3 dig through times. Everyone's favorite card from cons, or at least mine. So, overall, we're just trying to answer our opponent's threats efficiently, get some card advantage with Divination, Dig Through Time, End Hostilities, and then hopefully stick a Planeswalker and ride it to victory. Mana base is pretty straightforward. We are playing 1 Evolving Wilds, 2 Polluted Delta, which despite not being very good, they do fuel our Delve for Dig Through Time. So that is worthy of note. Then we've got Radiant Fountain to gain some life. We don't have Sphinx's Revelation anymore, so having some life gain is pretty nice. And I've found 27 lands to be a good number. Some builds only play 26, but this is one of those decks where you want to hit about, I'd say about your first 6 land drops at least to get to Elspeth. Often you even want to hit your 7th or 8th land drop, so 27 is pretty good, especially considering that 7 of our lands thin our deck. So I found 27 to be a good number. In the board, we've got a few different cards. We've got some more counter spells for the matchups really good. Disdainful Stroke for the Siege Rhino decks. Negate for basically just the Control Mirror. We've got some creatures. Brimaz is also largely for the Control Mirror, while also being quite good against Mono Red. Nyx-Fleece Ram is really for a lot of different things, and if you really wanted to get crazy, you could even consider main decking this card, as it's also a very efficient answer. It walls almost everything in the format. It's not good against token strategies like Rabblemaster and Brimaz, but it's quite good against anything else, really. Then to fill out the rest of the sideboard slots, we've just got some more removal. It might often be the case that, you know, Last Breath might not be a card we want 4 of, or Suspension Field isn't at its best. So if that's the case, we can board in something like a Race for the Constellation decks, or Glare of Heresy for the white decks, Reprisal for just whatever, I guess, and Fated Retribution can be pretty good against the monsters decks with their big threats and their Storm Breath Dragons and their Planeswalkers. Fated Retribution is also reasonably good in the mirror, just because if they tap out to cast Elspeth, you can just untap and kill the tokens and the Planeswalker. So I think this deck is pretty awesome. I think it is well adjusted to the meta right now. So hopefully I'll be able to win some rounds. Hope you guys enjoy. Alan Pennington with Gathering Magic. Thanks for watching. Thank you all for watching. If you haven't subscribed to Gathering Magic yet, please do so by clicking on the subscribe button. Or if you just want to watch some more primers, you can check out our playlist that contains every episode. And of course, you can always watch the next video by clicking on screen or on the link in the description box.